Hello and welcome. I am Humphrey Hawksley on this second day of 2024, your host for the next hour on Goldster, Purpose, Passion and Grit, where we fall into conversations with guests who have faced down life's obstacles with style, persistence and struggle. Maybe we should change the name of the show. My guest today, as you can see, is a smiling fellow. I am most proud when people tell me I am the happiest person they know, he tells us. But, and here is the but, I owe it all to the long, dark night of my soul that consumed my teen years. We are about to learn the mountains he has climbed to get to where he is today. Many of us have climbed similar mountains on similar or different issues. Is he really different to those around him? How alone has he been? And what are those elements for all of us that make up our tapestry of life, love, sexuality, faith, and how we live among the people around us? Well, my guest grew up believing he was fundamentally flawed and that he would be living in a world without love. He's now an acclaimed author and motivational speaker, and we're going to hear about hope, healing, prejudice, and adversity. And for our wonderful Goldster audience, Happy New Year, and use this conversation to tell us your stories. Ask your questions because we have with us a guest who can give answers. So without further ado, welcome Roger Leslie to Goldster Inside Story.
Thank you, Humphrey. I'm thrilled to be here, and Happy New Year to you too.
Yeah, I just have to tell everybody it is 5:45 in the morning where Roger is in Texas. But I have to ask, you've got two angel wings coming out from your shoulders. What on earth is all that about?
So one of the books that I wrote several years ago came about as a result of a dream. During this dream, I was told to live the next 365 days as if I would never experience those days again. I wasn't told that I was necessarily going to die, but I was told that I need to pack everything into that year that I could. I was also told in the dream to write about it as I lived it, and then to teach others how to do it as well. That year and that book became my last year. As a result of my last year, I started teaching the classes. And while I was writing the book, sometimes I was at a computer, but very often I was just out in the world. And so sometimes I was writing it freehand. And when I was writing it, I kept writing out last year, and it became very cumbersome. So I started abbreviating last year, and it became FLY, fly. And I thought, wow, that's the theme of my course. And so I call them fly courses. And behind me is part of the logo for the fly course, which gives a suggestion of wings and reaching up toward a mountain.
Well, that is I must go on a fly course. So that means that you cram into, or don't cram, but you live this year as if you're living with no tomorrow?
Yes, absolutely.
So how do you do it? Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Oh, it's a wonderful thing because there are three elements that shift automatically that enable you to get the most out of life. One, you become very, very present. Like if I were to think this is the last January 2nd I'm ever going to live, what do I want to put in it? I don't think, oh, I can just put it off to someday. I need to do it now. So you become very present. Secondly, you fulfill all those dreams you've ever had. Any of those goals you keep putting off, any excuses you have, like I can't afford it, I don't have the energy, I don't think it's the time yet. There are no excuses. So you get rid of all excuses. And third, you focus on three different elements: what you do for yourself, what you do for your loved ones, and the legacy you want to leave the world. That year changed everything for me. And I hope it changes for the people who've been taking the classes for the last several years as well. I know from personal experience it has, from the feedback that I've gotten. It's just been a wonderful experience, and it's helped hone my purpose in this life. Why am I here? What am I doing for others while I'm here?
Right. I am digesting all of that, Roger, but I have to tell you then we have to do this this Purpose, Passion and Grit show as if you're never going to do another Goldster show.
Oh, so there you go.
You put your all into it. I think that is a fantastic sort of premise to start off with. The book that we're actually discussing is your latest book today, but we can discuss anything, but we're going to use that as our anchor. Is called Light Come Out of the Closet, Memoir of a Gay Soul. Now, on Goldster, we like to say there's no assumed knowledge. We all think we know what gay means in that context, but give us your view on that. What is being gay exactly?
I think that definition might be different from any person you ask that question to, so I can only speak for myself.
Yes, please.
But I would say, for me, I knew somehow from the very beginning of my life that I wanted an intimate, loving connection with another male. So this was like long before I knew what sex was, long before I reached puberty. It had nothing to do with the physical contact with another person, but everything to do with the emotional connection I wanted with someone else, the most intimate emotional connection. And I knew always I wanted that with another male. For me, that's what being gay is.
And I just have to, so when you're, and I have to remember, when you're 4 or 5, and you have school friends and you're messing around in the dirt and building tree houses and that sort of thing, you're doing that generally with a male anyway, and the girls are something else, but you felt something different.
I did. And to be honest with you, when I was a child, Humphrey, I really thought I was just more mature than most boys because I loved the company of girls. I thought they were fun. I thought they were smarter than most of the boys I knew. I enjoyed being with them more than I enjoyed the activities of most rough and tumble boys. So I just assumed, wow, I'm just much more mature than a lot of the other kids my age. When we reached puberty, I noticed a transition happening for other boys that didn't happen for me. Their interaction with girls, and I expressed that in one of the chapters with some of my classmates in the book. I noticed that there was something changing with the boys and girls dynamics when I was in about 6th or 7th grade that didn't change for me. I still felt that same distance from everybody, but I remember the desire to have a connection was still with a boy. And I just knew at that point, or I believed at that point, that I would never be able to express that because it wasn't appropriate. So that's when I concluded that I would have to live without love.
So when people talk about sexuality, this is not the predominant element that you're talking about.
No, not at all. It's about intimacy. It's about emotional closeness and trust.
Okay. I'm going to park that for a minute because I'm on a bit of a learning curve here. If any of our audience is on a learning curve, let us know, because this is absolutely fantastic. Because if I can park that thought, because this is also about faith, God and religion, isn't it? So define for us, like you did, Gay, what faith means or what God means to you.
So for me, I've always considered myself a very spiritual person, even as a young child. So the idea that there is something beyond me that I can aspire to try to understand, to try to be more like, and to trust that is taking care of me, for me, that's faith. That is the sense that there's something bigger. It may be identified, it might be personified into a particular character like God, or any deity that could be with any religion, perhaps. But it's more the abstract idea that there's a sense of structure and justice in this universe, and I'm part of it, and I'm entitled to it, and I need to learn the rules of how it works so that I can contribute to it and benefit from it. To me, that's faith and spirituality.
And so it's not biblical as such. It's not the nativity. It's not the crucifixion.
Well, it can be, but no, not necessarily. It's not limited to that. I think most every religion has a main source, a Bible of sorts, that is an example of how we can learn it, how we can express it. And the Bible would be one of those. So I think there are great examples in there. as there would be in all great religious books throughout any religion or even philosophy books.
So for you personally, when you're looking at a moral compass, for want of a better word, you don't go to the Bible for guidance. You have something inside you that does it, that's not written down?
I would say more than anything, yes, that those great books like the Bible can lead us to the core of who we are, which I think is our soul. I just call it our soul. In my last year, I talk about the soul and the all soul. To me, the soul is the individual expression of the whole idea of who we are as spiritual beings, which is the collective unconscious of it, and that's the all soul. So we are the drop in the ocean. We also make up the ocean because we are part of it.
And when you were a young child, you realized that you had this affinity towards men that was different to everybody else. When did you understand your faith? Because you were brought up in a religious household, and that. Tell us about that, and when did you understand your faith?
The greatest understanding of my faith comes at the very end of the book, the climactic scene, when I realized, and I don't want to give anything away because I know we're leading.
No, because we're going to talk about it later.
That's right. But right, exactly. So, but that happened when I realized I had to learn for myself and determine for myself who and what I thought spirit, God, faith was, and be true to that rather than a more generic set of rules that would allow me to be loved and accepted.
And tell us about the religion of your childhood, the sort of childhood circumstances, your family that you grew up with.
So I grew up Roman Catholic, and my ancestors are Polish. So I lived in a very, I can't say it's secluded, but it was very generic Polish Catholic community where there was a lot of sameness. And from my understanding, the expectations for the sameness were to perpetuate that, to continue that. There are certain traditions we follow, and everybody needed to follow those. There are certain faith traditions, certain cultural traditions, and we just followed those. And if you didn't, then you weren't entitled to the same acknowledgement, love, acceptance as everybody else.
And that whole situation had an oppressive impact on you, such that when you were 9 years old, you wrote a note that you were going to leave home. Am I right in that? Tell us about that situation.
So interestingly, although I was learning from my family and my society and from my religion at the time, I loved media. I always loved movies. I always loved television. So I was getting a lot of my role models from television and from movies. And so when I decided I wanted to run away, I don't even remember what I was upset about or why I thought I wanted to leave. But it seemed like a very television sitcom sort of, oh, this is a great way to bond with my parents, because they'll come, like they do in the sitcoms, they'll come to my support and they'll say, oh, no, we don't want you to leave. Stay with us. We just love you so much. You're our son. And so I wrote the note saying, I was writing it on my bed. I was writing the note, and my dad came into the bedroom, and he saw the note, and he lay down on the bed next to me. And I thought, oh, this is it. This is that big moment where he tells me how much he loves me, and everything's going to be fine, and they want me here. And instead he said, running away is a very selfish act. You really don't seem to appreciate what your mother and I and your siblings do for you if you're going to be so selfish that you want to leave. And I was taken aback by that. I just thought, wait, this is not how it works in the TV shows. This is like about the 25-minute mark where everything gets resolved and everything's happy, and everybody says they love each other. And so in that moment, I realized I needed to ground my understanding of the world in something that had more palpable realism than television. So I like the ideal and the escapism of television and movies, but I realized I couldn't shape my life around it, because although they can inspire and empower, there are elements of reality that come into it that really don't apply to movies and TV.
And you didn't run away.
No, I didn't.
You didn't run away. You were. If anyone in our audience has got any experiences about feeling different, about feeling that they want to run away from it, I ran away from home for one night when I was told that the wrong person was going to babysit me. I didn't like them. I ran into the woods. If anybody's got an experience like that of feeling different, of finding faith or not finding faith, just let us know. And Roger and I, and we'll all discuss it. So at this 9-year-old thing, it wasn't about being gay, which you probably didn't really understand, or about God. It was about not being loved. Is that right?
And not feeling like I was being included, not feeling the connection that I was looking for. I thought that was a very indirect way of asking for it. Just, let them know I'm discontent, but I don't know how to express it, or I felt slighted or dismissed. I don't even know what the context of that running away sequence really was after all these years. But yes, it was about the connection with my family that I was seeking. I just didn't know how to do it, and I did it in a very poor way.
And you felt then you were in a world without love. I think there are a few pop songs about that sort of thing, talking about movies and scripts. How can you live in a world without love? How long did your world without love last for?
So it wasn't a world without love as much it was my perception that so long as I realized that I was gay, then the supposition was I could never tell anybody. I grew up in the 60s and in the 70s. So the idea was I knew what I was feeling. I knew what I was thinking, but that made me less of a good person. It made me less of a spiritual person, I thought. And so I decided I could just never tell anybody. So the result of that train of thought was, oh, then I'm just going to be by myself the rest of my life. So I thought I was heading into a life where there would be no love for me.
And of course, am I right in this? You didn't know until you told somebody.
Right. And even then, that was part of, it was a gradual process. I had to piece it together little by little. Even after I first started telling people, when I was in high school, I started sharing that awareness with people. I first told my sister, then I told one of my school teachers. I eventually sat down and talked to my parents while I was still in high school. And even after I started moving in that direction of realizing I couldn't just hide forever, ultimately I realized I had to have the courage to explore who I was and see if I could find love in the context that was natural to me.
Can I read something? I think this is when you told your aunt about it. Standing alone in my parents' kitchen, I told her I was gay. By this time, I was in my 20s and had been with my husband, Jerry, for several years, so the revelation was not surprising to her. But opening to her with that fact brought us an even greater bond than we already shared. Her immediate response intrigued me. Don't tell your uncle. Does that tell a million stories, that, of people in your position? Yeah, you can tell somebody, but don't tell the wider world.
It does. And even more impactfully, that has been how my parents have always responded to their awareness that I'm gay. They've loved Jerry. They have taken us into their home. We've celebrated our anniversaries, just the four of us. Back when my mom was still living, the four of us, my mom and dad, Jerry and I would go out to dinner and everything. So in that private way, they were very supportive. But interestingly, just as in the scene where I realized when I first came out to my parents that my mother knew that I was gay for a long time and never spoke those words to my dad, I could tell by their different reactions in that moment. Till the day she died, my mother never talked about my being gay to anybody, not even her closest relatives. She never mentioned. In private, the two of them would talk about it, yes, but no, my father doesn't talk about it either.
Or to you?
Yeah, they'll talk to me about it. Yeah,
But
in private, but
not to the next door neighbor or to the
not,
first cousin or anything like
or to
that.
the other relatives. No.
So your marriage, as it were, to Jerry, tell us how that came about and how long that's been going on for.
So in 1984, in August of 1984, Jerry and I became a couple, and we decided we wanted to be married. And so we even went out to dinner to plan our, we considered that our engagement dinner, and we decided to plan a marriage, plan a wedding. And but as we talked, this was 1984, the height of the AIDS epidemic. There was so little tolerance for anything original or unique in any relationship as we saw it. And we kind of sadly concluded at that point, oh, we're never going to have a wedding. This can never be. So we just decided we're married. We're together. We're married as of this date. We are a married couple, and that's how we presented ourselves. Of course, over the years, things changed. And then on our 23rd anniversary to the day, we ended up having a wedding in Canada, because at the time it still wasn't legal in the United States. Yeah. But interestingly, we had just planned, the two of us, to go on our own to Canada to get married. Then we had some friends who said they wanted to go too. So we thought, okay, it'll just be us and some friends. So Jerry just sent out an email just telling our friends and family, Roger and I are getting married. We're going to go to Canada. It's going to be on this date. If anybody wants to join us, it's a great place for a vacation. It's the Canadian Rockies. Please join us. We ended up having 40 guests at our wedding. Oh, goodness. It was the most beautiful week of my life.
And your wider family?
None of my family attended. Nobody.
So it was your friends
and Jerry's family. Of course, all of his family were there.
All of his family attended.
None of mine came.
And so how did you feel about that?
It was the most heartbreaking experience I've ever had.
Okay. So that was 23 years late after. Was that 23 years after your scene of standing alone in your parents' kitchen talking to your aunt?
Around that, a little less than that, but
you
yes.
had Jerry from there around that.
Oh yeah, that was many years back. Yes.
I think I want to explore this a bit more, but Emma has asked a very interesting question here. Love is such an all-encompassing word. Can you tell us what type of love you felt you were missing at your young age?
Great question, Emma. Thank you. So I always knew that my parents loved me. I always knew that. I've never doubted that. My family has never been very physically demonstrative in love. And I always felt like the odd man out in my family, because I was more affectionate, more openly affectionate, and that was frowned upon. I wanted to give hugs and kiss my parents goodnight. And when I was little, they let me do that early on, but then soon it became, this is just too close for us, Raj. So I always knew that I was loved, but I felt I needed to be embraced, and I felt that I wasn't embraced. So for me, that's what was missing, that sense of connection with other people. There's a sense where we can let our guard down and be completely ourselves. I'm only speaking for myself. Other people may feel differently, but in my relationship with my family, I sensed that they had a guard up that I could not transcend.
So when you say embrace, sort of generically, as it were, all of us feel that in front of certain people, we have to behave in a certain way. That embrace thing is that I, Humphrey Hawksley, you, Roger Leslie, can be in a situation where we can be ourselves, and those people are going to continue to love you.
Yes. And I didn't sense that when I was a child, and I wasn't necessarily, I was a rather shy, introverted boy. I did like my social interaction, and I had friends in the neighborhood and friends at school, but I really liked a lot of my personal projects, the things I did, which is probably what inspired me to want to be a writer, because I spend so much time alone. So, but in that context, I felt like when I could go into that space alone, I was free to be myself. But when I was outside of that with my family, there was just this sense of, Roger, rein it in, Roger, being too much yourself.
I just wondering how much of your of that situation that you've described, how much was it about you being gay, or how much of it would reflect on anybody that just wants to, any teenager in the family that wants to be themselves in front of their parents?
I think that's a great question, Humphrey, because that's really one of the points that I want to make in this conversation. Is the context for my issues was the fact that I was gay. But I think this is a universal concern that people have. They want to be themselves. They want to be acknowledged and accepted for who they are. And they want to be able to accept and acknowledge other people for who they are. So although the context of my story and my life is that I always knew that I was gay, and that's what was the trigger for me to recognize or to believe that I was different, I sense, and I know from speaking to many other people, that it could be any kind of issue that makes you feel a little bit different, a little bit out of sync with everybody else. And interestingly, I do think when it comes down to it, that's what makes us unique, and that's what makes us special. That is not the reason to be shunned or ostracized. That's the reason to be, back to the word, embraced.
Yes, it's embracing, and the amount of judgment that goes on, and there's sort of, I mean, I guess I was just, as you were talking, I was thinking, okay, so supposing you're a liberal in a conservative family, you know, you're still going to have to button your lip, aren't you, and watch your stuff. I wanted to there's a couple of chapter headings that you've got here, and this is sort of, about a third of the way through. One is chapter 7, depressed not lazy, and then chapter 8 is hiding. Encapsulate what was happening in those chapters.
So the depressed, not lazy scene takes place when I was in 6th grade. I have always been an adult. I was always an adult-pleasing child. Nothing mattered to me more than for my parents to be proud of me and for my teachers to respect me. So I was an all-A student. I wanted to do everything perfectly, even if it resulted in my not being among the favorite with my peers. I was an adult-pleasing child. I wanted to do everything right. And in the 6th grade, something shifted. And I believe it's because I reached puberty and I started figuring out my sexuality. But my grades just plummeted. I just didn't care. Couldn't do it. I couldn't find the interest or the stamina to study or do anything. I couldn't concentrate. And I had a teacher, Sister James Marie. I went to a Catholic school in grade school, and she would call us up to the front and hand us our papers and tell us what we got in front of the whole class. And my grades were so bad, she started by saying, when are you going to hit the books, Leslie? And that was my last name. She'd call me by my last name. And then she did that a few times. And then the last time she did it, she said, she changed it to, when are you going to hit the books, lazy?
Oh, okay.
And I didn't know at the time, because I didn't have the wisdom or the insight as a 6th grader, but I wasn't lazy. I was depressed. I was lost. I didn't know that at the time. I just thought, well, I don't know what's going on, but I don't care. I don't care about doing well. I'm not impressing anybody by making good grades. I don't feel more loved by making good grades. So I just couldn't get the stamina to do it. So that's where that came from. She called me lazy, and only in retrospect did I look back and I thought, well, I wasn't being lazy. I was emotionally trapped in this cycle of trying to figure out who I was and why things had gone so badly for me.
And were you able to talk to, she called you lazy, your parents, you couldn't talk to about it? You had no friends to talk to about it?
My dad has always been an extremely understanding man, very kind-hearted, and I hope that comes across in the book. He's always been very genuinely good-hearted, such a decent man. He still is. He's 92 years old. I see him regularly. We have a great father-son relationship. So he would express concern, but he would never necessarily get angry with me or anything. And I was really scared when that last report card came out from 6th grade. I knew I passed it. I assumed I had passed everything, but I knew I did not do well. And of course, my dad was working extra hours to send me to parochial school to get a good education. And so when that last report card came in, he just asked me what's going on. And I said, I just couldn't get motivated. And he didn't want to talk about it any more than that. He just moved on to, well, next year you better do better. And I said, yes, sir, I will. And by then I was able to work through some things and realize that much of my self-esteem came from doing well in school. So I built back up so I was doing well. But in the process, your second part of your question about the chapter hiding.
Yeah.
I had come to the realization at that time that I was gay and I could never tell anybody. So I started going into hiding. And one by one, I've always been attracted to intelligent people. The friends that I picked when I was a kid, I wanted to be around the smart kids because I liked smart people. I respect smart people. And it occurred to me about 6th grade or 7th grade that if these people were smart academically, they're probably smart in more general intellectual ways, they would probably be able to figure it out, what I was hiding. And what I was hiding was the awareness of my sexual orientation. And so one by one, I just dropped all those friends. I just eliminated them out of my life because I was afraid they were going to figure it out. And I thought that meant doom for me.
And you didn't think you could tell them or talk to them?
No. And again, this was the 60s, early 70s when I didn't have any.
It was the summer of love. It was the Beatles and David Bowie.
But these were all straight people, men and women together, not men and men, at least nowhere that I saw.
What about when David Bowie came out as a sort of androgynous hermaphrodite? Did that not shake the trees a bit?
Well, it's interesting. I've always felt that I'm a minority of a minority because I like masculinity and I've always been attracted to masculinity. So when I started learning about what gay was, the first things that came out, especially in the news media, because they were so negative about gay people, were outrageous stereotypes. And anytime they would, like post a picture of someone like at a gay pride parade, wearing a tutu and, just outlandish, I just thought, that's not me. That's not who I want to be around. That's not who I want to connect with. Not that I judge that, but it wasn't what I was looking for. So it actually drew me further into the closet because I thought, well, I don't know who I am here. I thought I was a gay man. If that's what gay is, then I don't fit there either.
So even within what you thought to defined you not being like everybody else was not like everybody else, not like everybody.
Right. So I thought the subculture that I might fit into, I didn't fit in there either. I just thought I'm just on my own here.
Oh my goodness. I'm going to ask you a big question at the end, but then I want to get to the end of this chapter sequence I'm on, because after the hiding, you've got one of the greatest escape adventures ever. What is that?
So my interest in TV and movies was really a wonderful escape for me because a survival escape. And when I was 11 years old, I saw the disaster movie, The Poseidon Adventure, the one where the ship is capsized by a tidal wave,
upside down, yeah,
and the band of 10 characters try to make their way up to the hull to try to escape.
Yes.
When I saw that at 11 years old, I was just enamored of it. It became an obsession. It's just like for several years, all I did was talk about it and look for articles about it and look for movie reference books so I could buy, stuff related to it. I'm still a huge Poseidon Adventure fan. It's still my all-time favorite movie. But I thought it was interesting that the tagline for the movie was the greatest escape adventure ever. And it really was my great escape. I could immerse my life into something that couldn't hurt me. I could love these characters. I could love this movie. And I never had to wait for a response to see if I was being accepted back. And I do think that it helped me survive this period in my life. It's because it's all I thought about. It's all I wanted to talk about.
You buried yourself in Hollywood happy endings.
Yes, exactly.
I just want to read, Emma has put a very, very telling, up till age 6, I wasn't brought up by my parents and was not loved. That lack of love in my formative years shapes the person I am today. That pain never leaves, and one has to find a way to let go. I'll be reading your memoir. What do you think of that, Roger?
I think, first of all, Emma, I admire you for being so brave to let us know and to share that, because that is the healing process, to come out of your own closet, whatever it is, and share how you framed your life and how you perceived it, and the result it had is a great act of courage. So I admire you for sharing that, and I thank you for doing that. And in response, I learned for myself that ultimately I had to learn to love myself, and I had to have a good relationship with my own psyche and my own heart in order to be happy. Once I learned to do that, everything changed, because I didn't depend on the feedback of others or the approval of others to be able to live the life that I dream.
So
So
you taught yourself to live without love.
I had to learn to create love for myself before I could adequately love somebody else and accept love from somebody else.
And
So I think
you didn't chase the love of your peers, because you said when you were a child you had this adult pleasing characteristic. You dumped all that, and you didn't need somebody's respect or somebody's affection or somebody's embracing. It comes to you, you don't go to it.
I still, in my adolescence, I still wanted the respect of adults. That was still important to me. It's always been important to me. But when it came to love, I realized that the love part, the embracing part, I had to embrace myself. I think what I concluded was that the judgment I was feeling from other people, and you may remember the scene early on where my mother's watching the lesbian wedding on television and she's so disgusted by it. I think I internalized that, and I acquired for myself this idea of self-loathing, because I thought, well, if my mother can't even love me in this context, I must not be lovable. So the process was all about, how do I work on myself and have a loving relationship with myself, so that then I can then have healthy relationships with other people.
Yes, it's all but Geeta, who's giving you a big hug, Roger. Geeta, you must have joined us a little late, but if pardon my ignorance, but the green, yellow, red, brown sign behind you, what does it mean? Give us that one line, just one line this time of what it is, Roger.
So it's the logo for my classes, Fly First last year. And the logo represents flying toward your destiny and fulfilling your dreams by doing everything that you want to do for yourself, for your loved ones, and to leave a legacy.
Okay, Geeta, that's it. And it's a fascinating thing. Live 2024 as if 365 full on, as if it's never going to be another year again like it. I mean, this is an incredible encapsulation, as it were. So you, how old were you when you married Jerry, even though it was just a sort of we're married thing? How old were you then?
I was 23.
23. Okay. And you've been married how long for now?
So we will celebrate our 40th anniversary this August.
Goodness.
So everybody do the math, How old is this guy? How old is this guy?
I mean, your 40th anniversary. Yeah, okay. That's great. I just want to ask you one other thing before I go on to quite a big question that I want to ask you. But during that, you married when you were 23. Your family sort of accepted. There's sort of half acceptance there. Your wider circle of people, what proportion of those that you thought you were friends with or thought were your closest family had to let go? What proportion of them came in?
When Jerry and I first got together, we pretty much wanted to start from scratch and build friendships anew. So we both have lifelong friends, people we grew up with, people we went to school with that we're still close friends with. But in general, around the early to mid 80s, when we were first building our life together, we decided we really wanted to meet people who knew us as a couple. Because for Jerry, he didn't come out till after we were together. So he had been married, had a wife, had 2 children. So the blessing for that for me is that I now have 2 children and 5 grandchildren, which is part of my ideal that I thought I was going to have to let go of. When I was a teenager, I realized, if I'm gay, I'll never have children, won't ever have grandchildren. Well, who knew that life had something greater in store for me? I was going to get everything. I just didn't know how it was going to come to me. But with Jerry, he was struggling a lot with his personal issues concerning accepting himself, and so we have many of the same lifelong friends we've always had, some, but more than anything, we just built a life together and made friends as a couple.
Oh, okay. That's so it is different, but it's not that different from any people that move through life. I have friends that they get married and never see them again.
Yeah.
They go off to a different life. I've probably done the same to other people. Emma has got, thank you for your contributions, Emma, here, because she has written, I've finally written and finished my memoir, awaiting publication. It addresses some issues you were talking about. Look out for Now I Know Who I Am. Is this what we are talking about? Is it, Roger, you discovering who you are?
I believe that's it. I believe that's everybody's journey. That when we think of our journey through life, it really is a journey within. We are trying to find who we are and have a great relationship with ourselves. From there, we can build to have great relationships with other people in an intimate relationship, in a family situation, in a social situation, and then globally. But it all starts with our own relationship with ourselves. So yes, Emma, I think that sounds wonderful. Congratulations on your upcoming publication. I'm thrilled for you.
It does sound a fantastic title. It sounds a little bit to me, your advice is what you're told in the airplanes as we're taking off, is that if anything happens, you put the oxygen mask on yourself before helping others.
Absolutely.
And this is what because your esteem and your outlook and your balance becomes less judgmental and more accepting if you're happy with yourself.
Yes. And I'm proud to be known as being one of the happiest people know. And, I've had people say, well, Roger can say no and nobody thinks anything of it. And the reason I'm able to do that is because I really believe once you know your yes, it's easy to say no to anything that doesn't fit that. And so I encourage people to determine who they are and what their mission in this life is. And then if that's your mission, if you choose that as your mission, then you know your purpose in life, and anything that doesn't fit that mission, you can easily say, oh, that must be for somebody else. I know my mission. I know where I'm going. This is the direction I've chosen for my life.
So, which brings me perfectly, thank you for that, into a section of the book that I wanted to quote to you in a way. In that moment, I made my decision, consequences, brackets, and my soul, question mark, be damned, be damned. This is the saying no. You gave up staunch adherence to tenets that you learned from your parents and grandmothers and the nuns who taught you at your school. I didn't care if I lusted. I didn't care if I hated. You didn't care if you were punished. I didn't care what I thought and felt strike me dead with a bolt of lightning. This is when you're age 18. Explain that to us.
There came a point where I realized I needed to let go of all judgment against myself and just explore where life was taking me. I needed to quit being afraid of where life was taking me naturally and just discover it. And that was that moment. It was like I needed to just release, because there were so many fears of, as I told you earlier, I wanted to be a good boy. I wanted to be respected by adults. I behaved, I never had a wild streak. I never went through a wild period in my life ever. That just never attracted me. But there was the point where I thought, if I'm ever going to be happy and if I'm ever going to create a life with any meaning, I have to quit being so afraid of being judged, of thinking, oh, any emotion might be wrong, any feeling might be wrong, and just find out for myself, explore those feelings, explore those thoughts, instead of continually pushing them away, and decide for myself, is this a good feeling or not? Is this a good behavior or not?
And when you decided that, did your world as you know it fall apart, or were you surprised at how much it held together?
The interior dynamic of my world opened up, and that's when the light came out of the closet, which is the reference to the title and the climactic scene. So once I saw the light, then everything fell into place, and most of it was already aligned and helping me. The universe or God or whatever you believe in, fate and destiny, it was already lining things up for me to really do something phenomenal with my life. I just had to break through the barriers of fear and judgment and get to it and just say, I have the courage to live who I am and move forward and see where it takes me. And that changed everything.
So now I'd like to take this, what we've just described, that I'm not going to sum up with one word because that would be too glib. And I want to match that with your faith. And you have a bit. Then God instructed me what to do with that epiphany. In private, build your faith in me. In public, have the courage to be who I made you. Over to you, Roger.
That internal relationship with self, I associate with my understanding of what spirituality is, what faith is, what some people call God. And I call it God. That's just the term that I'm comfortable with. But I realize that not everybody has the same concept of who or what God is. So I don't want to exclude anybody to think, oh, he's just talking about one little sliver of an idea. This is an all-encompassing idea. So I realized that as a spiritual person, because that's what's most important to me, my spiritual life, I wanted and needed to trust. I needed to trust that my destiny was set forth before me. The journey was there if I was willing to have the courage to climb that mountain and fly toward my destiny. And that's where this comes from.
It's a sort of journey that seems to be falling together naturally, although you didn't realize it would do that. But there was your self-esteem, let's say, the knowing who you are, and your religion. Did they mesh together, or was it one and then another, or give me that tapestry?
So people have asked me, why did I write this memoir of myself when I was from 11 till 18, now that I'm in my early 60s? Why go back that far? And here is the reason why. So early in my adult life, I let go of the religion of my youth. And I didn't think about it a lot. I didn't think about the stages of this stage of my life too much because it was so painful. I just thought, I moved past it. I'm beyond that. But as I got older and more recently, I realized, the perceptions I had of that religion of my youth as being hurtful to me actually gave me a great deal of the moral foundation I needed to become the man I am. So rather than avoiding it and ignoring it, I thought, let me go re-explore it and see what gift that gave me. And what I ultimately concluded was the conflicts that we feel, the inner struggles that we feel, those are the sources of our blessings, no matter what we're going through. Whatever we feel uncomfortable about, whatever we feel we need to resolve, those aren't the issues that we want to just dissolve and pretend they, and dismiss. We want to explore those because that's where the real gifts of growth are. Those are the things that prick our souls and let us know there's something better, there's something greater. Move toward that, move into that, whatever we're afraid of, move into that space, move into that inner struggle and figure it out and come out the other end, because at the other end is the light that I talk about in the book.
And I'd like to touch on a bit of, because we're talking about your formative years. So I think we go into your early 20s, and you just said you're now in your early 60s, although you don't look a day over whatever it is that you don't look over. But now let's go back to the thing, when you were on your escape in Hollywood and wanting everybody to talk in movie lines. Now you've got the youth, people that the next generation or two generations down from you, that have got the whole of social media to deal with, and maybe want to be like some silo on social media. Give us a thought on that.
So I think it's interesting what might seem right now is, this tunnel vision that young people have, that they're tuning out their current interactions and everything because everybody's looking at a phone and immersed in that. I think this is a transition into something much bigger, in that we will have more global connection as a result of this. Right now, things are breaking down structurally the way that we grew up because we didn't have social media. But I do think that there's a transition, there's a transformation happening in the world. And I do think ultimately it's going to open things up for everybody, where the differences we used to perceive as from people in different lands or different cultures or anything, those are going to start becoming mixed together and merged. And I'm hoping a sense of community happens, world community, that changes the whole world for the better. But that's just me. I'm painfully optimistic.
I know Jerry gets driven mad by your optimism, so we won't we won't let ourselves get into that situation. But actually, when you were talking, I was thinking of two separate things here. Firstly, somebody in your situation back in the 60s and 70s, when you were just in today in the 2000s and 20s, if they've got a family that's rigid in what they believe or whatever, is there any difference there, or is society more forgiving?
I think there's a plus and a minus to everything. I think on the plus side, there are so many more representations of different kinds of people, not just gay or straight or anywhere on the spectrum, but just in all contexts. And if you feel something or think you're of yourself as something, you can go online and find other people who are thinking and feeling the same thing, which is, I think, very therapeutic and very helpful for self-esteem. I think the downside, though, from my perspective, is there are so many opportunities available to explore things before we're ready to really explore them, that younger people might be getting into trouble doing things they shouldn't be doing just yet, just because everything is so available, and they get too much too soon and then don't know what to do with it. So I think their challenge is, how do you learn to process that and grow in a way and at a pace that's helpful and healing, rather than confusing and self-destructive.
And I have to ask you this, I think it just came to my mind. I mean, you never felt all those years back that you wanted to change gender, because that's the big issue now.
No, that never occurred to me. In fact, I didn't really even have a perception of a spectrum back when I was growing up. It was just either you were straight or you were gay. That was my understanding at the time. So I'm learning a lot. I feel it's very helpful to help understand that there are many different nuances and shades of who we are. It's not just one extreme or the other, or somewhere right in the middle.
And you mentioned the very close and good relationship you have with your father, but you also said how heartbroken you were that none of your family turned up to your Rocky Mountains wedding.
Yes.
Square that circle for me.
To be honest with you, I went to see a therapist during that time because that was the toughest experience I ever had. I was shocked because my parents were so kind and supportive of Jerry and me. They knew the quality of man Jerry is. We were already together 23 years. So it's just like, why would you not want to celebrate that with us? Why would you not want to be there? So, imagine standing at the altar and looking out, and everybody's there smiling, so happy for you. And I realized that not one person in that crowd was someone from my life before Jerry was in it. And so that took a lot of healing to do. It took a lot of understanding on my part to just understand where my dad was and is, and just to love him and accept him for where he is. Even though it hurt and disappointed me, I needed to, in this sense, I guess, be the parent and just accept that he is where he is and I'm not there, and he's not there with me. And so we have other great elements to our relationship as a father and son that make us feel very close to each other. In fact, the next book that I have coming out is a tribute to my dad. And so
were you ever able to discuss that with him, that particular day with him?
No, he doesn't. They don't want to talk. My family does not want to talk about it.
Oh, yes. Would you say that's an unresolved issue, or that you've resolved that within yourself so everything can move on?
It's an issue that I had to resolve with myself.
Yeah.
And I, to be quite honest, sometimes the hurt does show up again, and I realize, okay, I haven't completely healed everything about that. So it inspires me to dig deeper and think, okay, where do I find the love in this situation? How can I show up as the loving presence in this issue as well? Because I think that's what we're all called to ultimately, is to be the core of who we are, and that is love, period.
Yeah, that's Gita says how much respect for you. Emma also, so much respect for you. Good luck in whatever you set your mind to, Roger. You are an inspiration. She says, Gita gives her heart. Lovely, Roger. Sue Townley, I agree, Emma. Inspiring is the word. Ditto to Emma. Love your wisdom. I love your wisdom too. Do you think if all this was happening today, family would feel different? Your family, I think we're referring to there?
I don't think so. I think we have to accept people exactly where they are. And I do think maybe that's a lot of what's happening, at least in American culture right now. You know, what seems to be such great division, especially political and ideologically.
Yes.
I think that some things just stay the same. And it really takes the courage to want to be loving, to rise up and say, okay, I'm willing to embrace all people, all thoughts, all ways. And the only way you do that is to come to terms with yourself. You only get there by working on yourself. It's not about changing the world, it's about changing ourselves.
Stay there. Don't run away, Roger. I'm going to embrace the world with what is coming up now in Goldster Conversations. January the 4th, I'm with Kaylee Boisvert, a guru who navigates for us the labyrinth of handling our money, investments, bills, for the separated group, particularly from women when their partners handle those things. January the 5th, I think that is Friday, I'm with Michael Muthukrishna and his much talked about book, A Theory of Everyone, that looks at how to solve the big challenges of our future. January the 9th, that's next Tuesday, Lucinda is with Poppy Lloyd on Purpose, Passion and Grit. That's this show with Save the Children. She's been working with street children in Africa. January the 11th, Lucinda is Riverstone Live. It's a Riverstone Live and a Zoom event with the wonderful novelist Amanda Craig and her new book, The Three Graces. And January the 12th, Rachel Trethway returns to Goldster Inside Story with her new book, Mothers of the Mind. There are these are biographies of the mothers of Virginia Woolf, Agatha Christie, and Sylvia Plath. Mothers, Roger, do they shape our destiny?
Absolutely. Ultimately, I have concluded that I have my mother to thank for my building my backbone. I've always been a very sensitive child. I was a sensitive child and I was a sensitive adult, but my mother's response to some of the things that I went through in my childhood, as you'll read in the very first few chapters of Light Come Out of the Closet, her reaction and her personality really gave me the backbone that I needed. And I think that is a great deal of the foundation that built my character. So with all of the disparity that could have happened, with all the struggle that it resulted for me because of my interpretation of what that all meant, ultimately, I have my mother to thank because she gave me the kind of courage to stand up for myself and learn to accept myself for who I am, even if she didn't necessarily do that herself.
So the mothers of the Emma, this interview has been very emotional for me. Your story made me shed a few tears. And I feel your pain at the point that you suffered. Emma, thank you so much for that thought. We have couple of other thoughts here. Sue Harvey, very wise words, something she's working on. Gita sending much love to Roger and to Jerry, your dad, your heavenly mum and family, and sending much love to Humphrey and Joy and everyone here. Thank you so much for that, Gita, for the new year. Very quickly, in just a couple of seconds, your next book, you were saying, just encapsulate that for us.
So the very next book is a calendar book that goes along with setting New Year's resolutions and moving forward. And it is called Book of Days, Motivation, and is filled with motivational quotes that my dad amassed over the years. When we went through his house, we moved him to a senior living facility recently, and my brothers and I went through the house, and I found a whole book of motivational quotations that he recorded throughout his life to inspire him. And I thought, what a great tribute to him and a great way to inspire readers. So it's called Book of Days, Motivation. It's the first in a series of books like that, and that'll be coming out any day now.
Oh, brilliant and fantastic. You're doing it despite these sort of unresolved issues. Finally, we have what I call the Goldster question. Give me in one top line: when life looks bleak, you don't have the confidence, the mountain's too high to climb, you've had an accident or something dreadful happen to you, what do you say to yourself to get you through it?
The first thing I recommend is go within, try to find some peace, some core of peace within you. And the first action to take is to do something loving for somebody else.
That's a do something loving for someone else and find out a peace within yourself. Time's winged chariot is upon us. What a moving Goldster conversation we've had. Thank you all for being with us. Thank you, Gita, Emma, and others for talking and discussing with us Roger's incredibly moving journey. Until Thursday, when I'm with Kaylee Boisvert and Money, Money, Money. Invest in the new year, be generous, understand others, stay curious, keep reading, and of course, stay Goldster. And a big, big thank you to the great Roger Leslie for your brilliant, honest, and touchingly open account of your life, of finding the light. I will never forget this show. Thanks so much, Roger. Bye.
Thank you.